Hey friends, gonna keep this really short today, but I hope you have tea or coffee or something to enjoy this with because I'm gonna be giving my 3 best tips for reducing breakouts, and I am talking about acne. I basically have got this down to like where it's pretty much a science for me, where I can predict when I'm gonna get a breakout. If I want to prevent one, I can do certain things to prevent it from happening. Say I've got like, not that I do anymore, but like an event or something that I want to make sure like I'm not going to be self-conscious about my skin for, that kind of thing. I'm not a doctor, I'm not a dermatologist, I'm not an esthetician. Like I have had no sort of like, I don't have any sort of certificate, but I live in my own skin and I have my own skin, and I have figured out like a system for me that works, and it's worked for a couple years. So I know that like what I'm doing is working, and I know when I fall off the system that I have, that's when I get breakouts, and that's when I get like all sorts of like hives and wonderful things. So I know this works for me, and I figure like you shouldn't have to spend so much money just to have nice skin. That's something I used to think like I would have to spend hundreds of dollars just to have nice skin, and only people with lots of money to spend on like skincare treatments and stuff and facials could have nice skin, and that's just not true. So I'm sharing what I know and what works for me. So the first thing is starting to know or figure out a little bit about your own hormones and what that looks like for you, because everybody is different. And this is where I believe that like there is no one size fits all skincare system for people. So if people try to tell you like just buy this skincare system or whatever and it'll work for you, like there are some really great ones out there, but there's no one size fits all. Everybody is different and your hormones are the same. So there are some things about hormones, like for example, stress. If you have a really stressful life or you're going through a period of stress, I learned this from my friend Allie, who is amazing with hormones. She's the person to go to. She taught us in my Facebook group that when you stress, that's stress is related to the hormone cortisol. So cortisol in your body goes up. It actually causes your skin to produce more like oil, sebum, and that's when you get breakouts. So that's why when we're stressed, we tend to get more breakouts. It's not just like, oh, like there's an actual biological connection there. And so that's something that you can kind of know, like if you learn how to get a handle on your stress, not always possible. We can't just live a stress-free life, but if you can learn healthy ways to handle stress versus unhealthy ways, that's going to limit your breakouts. But that's just one really tiny piece of the puzzle when it comes to hormones. There are so many pieces, and again, like you don't have to be a doctor to understand the basics of how it works. And like, no, I'm not a doctor, but I've had multiple years of education in human anatomy, physiology, and so I like, yes, I do have a pretty good understanding of how the human body works, and I teach this in my lead group as well, or in my Facebook group. So there's a certain level of like deeper understanding, but you don't have to be a doctor to understand a little bit more about how your own human body works, because we live in it. Like we should know kind of the basics of things that are taught beyond what you might get in school, like in high school. Because it's kind of weird that like we live in our own human body, but yet we hardly know anything about it. But that's how amazing and intricate it is. And to simply say something like, oh, my hormones are acting up, but not really knowing what that means, that's really sad. And we should know a little bit more about like how things are going to affect our hormones, like what products we're using are affecting our hormones, what food we're eating affects our hormones, and how that's going to play into like what your skin looks like, because there is a definite connection. I was just reading some studies yesterday about how nutrients that our body needs, that it doesn't produce itself, we need to get from food. And if you have an imbalance in those nutrients, it's going to show up on your skin. A lot of like dry, itchy skin, scaly skin, things like that are directly related to certain imbalances within your body. So anyways, that's like a whole tangent for another day. Basically, just like start learning somewhere. There is so much information for free on the internet about how to learn a little bit more about the basics of your hormones. You can go get tests, you can go get blood work done, you can go get allergy testing done. Like there's really, like, if you want to get this like figured out, that's one of the first steps that I would recommend. Okay. Second is to take out any product from your skincare routine that has the ingredient fragrance in it. This is one of the first things that I figured out about my skin. And so when I started digging deeper into it, you learn that fragrance itself is an ingredient in products, but that one ingredient can house hundreds of different chemicals in it that the company doesn't have to tell you what's in it, because it's a proprietary it's like a proprietary thing. It's, you know, it's their secret. They don't have to reveal that. And if you call and ask, they won't tell you. They're not legally obligated to tell you. And so there may be a skin irritant or an allergen, like something that you're allergic to, in that fragrance that they don't have to tell you, and you'll never know. So when I started, I was looking at all my products and wondering, like, is there something that's like irritating my skin? Is there like a common ingredient? And literally the only thing that was common in all of them was that word fragrance. So I decided, okay, I'm just gonna get rid of all my products, or like use them up, and then when I purchase new ones, look only for products that don't have that ingredient fragrance in it, because I just figured like something in there, and I didn't know at the time that it could be hundreds of different chemicals, but something in that was irritating my skin. It didn't like it, so I got rid of it, and that was like the first step that made a really big difference in my breakouts, because you know, something in there could have been like a skin irritant, and I wouldn't know. I would never know. So I just avoid it, and I choose to go with companies that are way more like transparent with the disclosing of their ingredients. And the third thing is food triggers. So again, I kind of already went into this a little bit, but I don't know what this hair is doing. This topic is not always like, not everybody kind of accepts it or thinks that like food can cause breakouts. But most people kind of like know what certain foods agree with their body or not, right? Like, you know, if there's certain things you can or can't eat. And some people are just like not willing to give up certain things at all, right? So for me, it was dairy. I actually, I don't have a dairy intolerance. I think I actually have an allergy to it. I haven't been tested, but I have like allergic reaction symptoms versus intolerance symptoms. So I choose to stay away from dairy. I still have it a little bit because I gave it up for a period of time, and now I'm able to like introduce it back in small amounts and not have these like big flare-ups or anything, because my body was able to like calm down that irritation, and now my immune system isn't like freaking out over it. It's just like, oh yeah, like we can handle that or whatever really quickly, because it's not being bombarded with all these other things. It's not like overloaded. So knowing your food triggers could be a reason that would help clear up some breakouts for you. And excuse me, it's a process and it takes some time, but it's totally worth doing. So those are my 3 biggest tips for reducing your breakouts. And that's just like, that's the beginning. That's barely scratching the surface. If you want more information on this, I have a Facebook group where I go do more intense, not intense, but like more into detail about all of these topics and more things that I have learned in the past about my skin, because I know that like my skin was keeping me from showing up in my life in all shapes and forms, and I was really tired of that. So I like made it my mission to figure out how I could get the skin that I wanted naturally and not have to like take a medication for it or anything. And I was able to do that. And so now I want you to have that same feeling of like, I don't want you to hide or feel like you can't show up in your life because you're self-conscious, because that's not serving the world in any way. The only way the world is going to get to know you and your amazing talents is by you be willing to show up and not be self-conscious about like your skin or what it looks like that day or what it's doing. So if you want to check that out, I'll put the link in the description of this video and you can request to join that group, and I will see you in there.